How you guys all doing today? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege. Today on October 30th, talking a bit more around the NFL. A lot of good stories, a lot of breaking news yesterday just kind of dropped randomly, so we're going to touch on that throughout the show, starting with, in my opinion, the biggest piece of news: Anthony Richardson getting benched and Joe Flacco now being the starting quarterback of the Colts. Also, the Baltimore Ravens traded for a wide receiver. Diontae Johnson goes back to the AFC North and joins the Ravens. And also in today's show, we're going to talk about the NFL Honors Awards. We did it back in the start of the season. Now we're going to revisit that and give an updated version based on what we've seen through the first half of the season. All those things and more coming up on today's show. Before we get started, though, and we get to Anthony Richardson, I'd like to remind you guys that if you guys have any questions during the show, any comments, or any opinions you'd like to share, we always are glad to hear about it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and insights. Whether it's a quick comment, question, or anything you just have to share, please don't hesitate to do so. And if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message stands out and gets featured on today's show, there's an easy way to do that just by using the new Super Chat feature. You can use that by just clicking on the $ at the bottom of the chat box and sending in your Super Chat that way. And this way it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. So we rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as exciting, as conversational, and just engaging as always. I always like when you guys send in messages. Then I can get your guys' thoughts on anything I say or any of the biggest news around the NFL. So make sure to do that. But that now allows us to jump into the first segment. The biggest piece of news, I believe, so far in the NFL has been this news around Anthony Richardson. The news became official yesterday after Monday, where there was speculation about Indianapolis's quarterback situation, the position, the incident that we talked about on yesterday's show, right? And how Anthony Richardson, tapped out of the game. Later, he revealed to everybody that he was just very tired. He was exhausted, so it didn't paint him in a good picture. It didn't paint a great image about the presumed leader, the quarterback, the face of the franchise, if you will, right? If you're going to draft him fourth overall, you expect him to be all those things. And I think seeing a moment like that, it definitely fell short of the expectations, right? Or the bare minimum of what you'd want to see in your quarterback, right? Just from a leadership standpoint. So that mixed in with his performances also haven't really done him any favors, and the Colts finally pulled the trigger yesterday and announced that they were benching Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco. And I mentioned Richardson's play. It hasn't been a smooth ride for Anthony in his first two seasons with Indianapolis. He only played 4 games in his rookie year last year, and then after not playing, he played 4 games last year after already not playing that many college games in at Florida, right? So you have very limited college experience. Your first year in the NFL, you become the starter pretty early on, and then you get hurt, and you miss all those valuable games, all that experience under your belt, right? So that's unfortunate, but those are injuries, right? So then this year he comes back, he's the presumed starter, and we're seeing more of those struggles. And I think a lot of people hear Anthony Richardson and here to defend him a little bit is that, this is almost like his rookie year, realistically, because playing 4 games in your actual rookie year is not enough. So we're still going to see those growing pains, and we definitely have, just from the sample size that we have seen so far. And I know it hasn't been great. He's won 3 out of his 6 starts this year, and just the performances also haven't been too convincing. He had a 59% completion percentage in 2023, which isn't amazing, but you can kind of accept it and feel like he's going to improve off of that. But this year it's only gone worse. He's at about 44% through his first 6 starts, and it's tough. It's tough because this Colts team, I think, is a lot better than maybe a few people would have anticipated early on in the year. So when you see you have a good team, when Josh Downs is playing crazy, A.D. Mitchell is giving you plays here or there, Alec Pierce is making plays down the field, Michael Pittman is also getting more involved, and Jonathan Taylor looks awesome as well. You kind of get this optimism about this season, like, wow, like, all these guys are a lot better than we thought. We just need the quarterback. And we drafted a guy pretty high overall, but he's just not, there yet, realistically. So then you look at who you have as your options, right? And then there's Joe Flacco. While Flacco has looked significantly better and more secure, and it just seems like it's a better fit for the Colts right now because it feels like they're in win-now mode with the team that they have right now. And, he's played pretty well this year. He has a 65% completion percentage, 7 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. In the 3 games that he has played, he's thrown for 716 yards this season. And it just looks different, right? You don't have to know all those stats to look at the games that Joe's played and the games that Richardson's played and how, from a passing aspect, it goes a lot smoother with Joe. It always feels like he's more under control. And, of course, he has ages of experience over Anthony Richardson, right? But, the physical aspects aren't there. So Richardson just needs to develop those, the more quarterback abilities rather than just being a physical specimen, right? That's just naturally given to him. So he has to work on the other things. And it feels like the Colts feel like this is the best pass fast for him to try and get there, because Anthony Richardson now, oddly enough, from last year's draft class, he joins Bryce Young as the 2 first-round quarterbacks from 2023 to have been benched this year. Young, obviously the number 1 overall pick, Anthony Richardson, the number 4 overall pick in that draft. But with that being the case, Indianapolis still, according to The Athletic, believe that Richardson and are hoping that Richardson can sit and learn from Joe Flacco, and they pretty much still have him in as their future quarterback. And Indianapolis also in a much better spot than Carolina, right? People look at this situation and think that it's similar to Bryce, but with the Colts and how the Colts run their organization with Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay, they're leading the charge. They have a great head coach also. It's definitely more secure with the Colts as an organization. So with Bryce, his situation is a bit more dire, not for his own doing, just because the Panthers are still trying to figure out everything about who they are, what they want to be. So it is just similar in the fact that they've been benched, but Anthony Richardson is definitely in a better situation for sure than Bryce Young. And, not only Bryce, but you see other quarterbacks. You think of Justin Fields, Will Levis now, Mac Jones, who are like 25, 26 years old. And, they have been starters, but now they've been benched this year in 2024. The similarity is that, they still need work on the quarterback aspect of the position, right? Before being thrown out there against NFL competition, I think we all would have agreed that much like Fields and Levis and a little bit of Mac Jones, right? There still needs a lot of quarterback work to be done with those guys. Fields and Levis are great athletes, great, physically, but you look at guys like Joe Flacco now, Mason Rudolph, I guess, can fit that bill. Russell Wilson for the Steelers. These guys have everything a lot more refined than they do. Not to say that these guys are busts or anything like that. They just need a little bit more time. And, they've just been thrown into the fire, so to say, and it hasn't worked out. And usually it doesn't when you're just thrown out there. Unless you hit on every single point, it's really not going to work out, and not every quarterback is going to be Jaden Daniels or CJ Stroud. But even then, CJ fell into a fantastic spot, and Jaden has a lot more years of experience than all those guys when they entered the NFL. So there are differences there. Not everybody works out right away, can get that instant gratification that everyone ideally wants to fall in. But which is, speaking of that and the quarterbacks and all that, it's what Indianapolis believes that can happen with Joe Flacco here. And, they're 4-4 right now. So on this decision and just my thoughts overall on how I feel about it, you look at this, the play is one thing, but also when we see the actions that Richardson showed and sort of tapping out just because he was tired. I think that definitely struck a pretty negative chord around the organization, his teammates, the fan base, and everything like that. So that definitely played a part in it. I could see that, but mainly I think it's to the desire of this decision just comes from the fact that they want to lock in this year and really play very well this year and get something out of this year because they feel like they have a competitive team. They really feel like they can go out there and challenge. So, why wait? Because next year, if you think, oh, like, we have a good team this year, but just imagine how good we'd be next year. It usually doesn't pan out like that every roster from year to year changes a lot. So you're not going to have the same group of guys that you have now. You have to take advantage of this year, and I think that's what the Colts are doing. I don't really mind the move, to bench a 22-year-old quarterback is not the end of the world. Going forward, he could start in a couple years and be 24, even 25, and I feel like it would be in a better spot than he is right now, learning from Joe each and every week, getting in better spirits with the fan base. I'm not saying he has to apologize or anything like that publicly, but maybe he decides that that's the best thing. But right now it's been a bad run of form on the field and also with the tapping out off the field as well. So I think this is good for the Colts to do it, to kind of protect Richardson as well and kind of get him just out of the spotlight and, protect him a little bit more. Joe will be the starting quarterback, and from what we've seen this year and last year, he has more than enough to play very well with this Colts team that sits around 8th place right now in the seeding. So they've been competitive with they beat the Steelers. They've been competitive with the Texans, and they've just had other close games as well. So they're trying to make some magic here in 2024. I don't really blame them, and I don't think it's the end of the world for Anthony Richardson. He could come back in a year or two maybe. That wouldn't even be so bad, and then really get a good shot of it. And I think that was the plan from the beginning. Give him some time to develop. Don't just throw him in there with limited experience everywhere else, because like everybody knows, it's a whirlwind when you just enter the NFL, not just on the field, but off of the field as well. So that's what the Colts are going to do going forward. For us going forward, we're going to head into our first break, and when we return, some more breaking news yesterday. The Baltimore Ravens trading for another weapon on offense. I don't hate the move, but it wasn't their biggest need. So was this move necessary for this Ravens team that's been dominating, or should they have focused on the defensive side of the ball? We're going to answer that question and give all the details on the trade when we return. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
We are back now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast to talk about some more breaking news that we had yesterday that we didn't get to talk to on the show, but we're going to recap it all here in today's segment. The Baltimore Ravens trading for Diontae Johnson. The news broke yesterday that Diontae Johnson was heading back to the AFC North after ESPN reported that the Ravens were trading a future 5th-round pick for Diontae Johnson, and in return, the Ravens would get Johnson, obviously, and a future 6th-round pick from the Carolina Panthers. And much like Cleveland, Carolina not in the best spot this season, obviously. not a great outlook for them going forward. So they decided to just cash in on Diontae Johnson, get whatever they can from him, and with their season pretty much all said and done, it's a logical move. I'm not gonna sit here and like criticize them or anything for tanking or whatever, quitting, whatever you may call it. But it makes sense. There's no point in trying to keep them around, especially with Carolina. I feel like they're very susceptible to just hitting the reset button again. So you might have a new head coach in there. You don't know what's going to happen with Bryce Young. It really makes no sense to keep around a veteran receiver like this. So I don't hate the move by that standpoint also. And, originally Diontae Johnson was only traded to Carolina just this year when the Steelers traded with the Carolina Panthers for Diontae Jackson, sending Diontae to Pittsburgh. Diontae went to Carolina, and he was part of a plan for this Carolina offense, right, where you look at the excitement around Bryce, you think of a young guy like Xavier Legette there, Adam Thielen, the kind of season that he had last year, and the pieces that they added on the offensive line. You kind of got excited for this team, but still it fell very much short with the play of Bryce Young and just everything not really fitting together from the start. So this project that looked promising kind of just fell apart for Carolina. And, Diontae also showed some of his frustrations in some of the interviews as well. So now Johnson joins a Baltimore Ravens offense with Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, Derrick Henry, of course, Isaiah Likely, and Mark Andrews. Very stacked offense already without Diontae Johnson for the Baltimore Ravens. That offense was not the problem, evidently. It was every answer you would have possibly imagined for anybody, right? You had the tight ends. You had the wide receivers that fit to your system. Obviously, you bring in Derrick Henry, which is just overpowered now for this Ravens offense, right? They lead in like every category or something like that. They've been right up there with like the Lions or the Saints for a couple of weeks. The Packers you could throw in there, I guess, as well for very good offenses. But he joins already a very good offense. So it's not bad, but I feel like I'm just a little uncertain about it, and I'll get to that in just a second. Certainly, like I said, an improvement on offense because Johnson does bring a unique skill set. He's a very good route runner. That's one thing that he does very well. Apart from other things, right? He's a very good, short space, one-on-one beater. If you have just one guy in front of him, he'll route him up, and he can run a lot of different routes, short, intermediate, and stuff like that. He did have some criticism in Pittsburgh for the drops and everything like that. He had the record for not scoring a touchdown all year. I'm pretty sure that was him recently for the Steelers. More so to do with their offense, but it just didn't end too positively there in Pittsburgh. So now he returns to join the Baltimore Ravens, and when it's funny when Patrick Queen signed with the Steelers, I thought it was so funny that the Steelers managed to steal away a player from the Ravens, and now seeing this as a Steelers fan, seeing Diontae go to the Ravens, I know he didn't choose to go there. Like Patrick chose to go to Pittsburgh after not signing with the Baltimore Ravens, so it is a little bit different. But for me to see Diontae go there, I kind of got a little bit of I'd imagine what the Ravens felt when Patrick Queen joined the Steelers. But of course, it wasn't his choice. The Carolina Panthers decided where they were going to trade him, so it all kind of falls in line with that. And again, I don't mind the move. It makes sense for Carolina, like I said, and maybe for the Ravens too. Maybe there's something there with Rashad Bateman. He kind of had a pretty bad drop against the Browns where it just hit him right in the chest and he dropped it. I'm assuming the sun got in his eyes, but maybe they're not feeling too sure about Bateman, but some reports say that they do feel pretty strongly about him, so I don't know. I don't know what the reason would be to bring in a guy like Diontae, other than the fact that you can run some more 11 personnel sort of formations, lighten up the box, if you will, for Derrick Henry. Maybe that's a problem that they've run into recently against the Browns, where they just stacked the box and they took their chances one-on-one with Bateman, with Zay Flowers, and the Browns ended up winning. The Ravens struggled in that game, so maybe they want to run a bit more 11 personnel, not just have 2 wide receivers out there, have Diontae, have Rashad, have Zay Flowers out there, along with a tight end and Derrick Henry. Obviously, lighten up the box a bit and see how defenses react to that, not just 2 tight end formations, which I understand that point, but also, Diontae is better than Nelson Aguilar, but still, I feel like you could run 3 set wide receiver formations, or you could run 11 personnel with Nelson Aguilar. Maybe he doesn't strike the same fear, but, Nelson Aguilar's been doing all right for them. So, again, I felt like it was a little bit unnecessary, but I do understand that adding a good player does make you better. So, for my questions about it, it doesn't make them any worse, but still, along that being the case with the Ravens and wanting to run more 11 personnel, I just don't want this to become a fact where the Ravens almost become like too enamored with the pass. If they just go crazy running 11 personnel each and every other play, and they, negate the run because of that, they're getting all these open looks, they're spreading defenses out because they're still loading the box up. I don't want them to become too comfortable with that, because I don't think that really suits them. I think running the ball with Patrick Ricard out there, especially as a fullback, or another guy extended out from the offensive line, that's who the Baltimore Ravens are. That's who they are, running the ball like 20 times with Derrick Henry, or throwing Justice Hill in there as well. I believe they're getting Keaton Mitchell back also, so that should add to the running game. But I don't want this to become a fact where you just have like 3 or 4 very good receivers, and I don't want them to running like empty backfield formations and things like that. That is definitely not who the Ravens are. A lot of the times it's what the modern offenses are now running in some instances, but it's never really felt like that was the Ravens, especially when you bring in a guy like Derrick and he's on this historical pace. The thing that bothers me about it is that this could become a situation where they reserve back to the problems that we pointed out with them last year, right? In the AFC conference game, they just went away from the running game. They were too pass heavy. Lamar tried to make too many plays with his arm rather than running the ball like they had been all season. I don't want that to kind of be the trend now when you bring in Diontae Johnson. Also, not only that, but this offense was not the problem with this team. The defense still is causing a lot of concern, especially losing their last game with the Cleveland Browns, with Cedric Tillman out there, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, who, no shade to those guys, but aren't, some of the better guys in the NFL. David Njoku is pretty good, but, Cedric Tillman, I don't think Jerry Jeudy's done too much this year. So for the passing game to still look or the passing defense to still look so worrying is a concern. And this pass defense, just in terms of where they rank last in the NFL in passing yards allowed per game. They're allowing the most passing yards per game at 291 per game. They're 25th in total yards allowed at 361 yards per game allowed. And they're allowing 26 points per game, which is 26th in the NFL as well. They're, bottom third of the NFL in passing defense. So that to me was so blatantly obvious. I don't see why you'd want to go trade for a wide receiver and not try to add to that secondary. I know they had guys like Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins out, but even still, they're not going to be ranked that low just after one game. Those guys just missed last game. This has been a thing when Marlon's been in there, when Nate Wiggins has been in there. So I do understand the fact that you can't just pick and choose to just go get a secondary player if it's not available, which makes sense. But if the trade-off is getting Diontae, again, Diontae's a good player. Adding a good player is great. But I feel like if they don't add a secondary player or, another corner or maybe another safety or something like that, it could be worrying to try and figure this defense out. If you're giving up over 26 points per game, it's not going to hold up in the AFC, the playoffs and things like that, where everything is so tight. The margin of error gets a lot smaller, and you're giving up plays like this. It's not a recipe for success. Now, you could say you try to outscore everybody with all these weapons, which could be true, but again, it just falls to my concern about them maybe reserving or trying to revert back to being too pass heavy, and I don't want them to do that, honestly, because I don't think it fits them, and I don't think that's who they ideally are. They haven't really run the ball with Derrick Henry too much, especially in this last game, so they need to go back to doing that, need to get him going a little bit earlier. I know teams stack the box, and I know it's not as easy as it sounds, playing, great defenses and all, but, you got to find the way to do it. With Lamar, using him, his running ability, it's what makes this team great. So hopefully, this doesn't become a case or anything like that, but definitely a surprising move, all in all. I didn't expect them to get a wide receiver, much less Diontae Johnson, so we'll see how it all plays out. I believe they play the Denver Broncos, so that's a great defensive team. We'll see how much they're committed to stopping the run and how successful they are trying to stop Zay Flowers, Diontae, Rashad Bateman in one-on-one scenarios. It should be something to certainly watch this upcoming week. But speaking of, the games and things like that, we're going to get to the midseason awards for the Chip Shot Football Podcast. We did one at the beginning of the season, predicting the awards in 2024. Now, halfway through the year, we've updated it a little bit. Some changes, certainly, to a lot of the awards, so we're going to go through it, and I'll provide you guys my picks for the NFL honors after the first half of the NFL season.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Jumping back into the action now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast, and looking, now that we are officially through the first half of the season, we went back, and this seems like the perfect time to give our updated mid-season awards, because we did it at the beginning of the year, and I felt pretty confident about it, but now looking through my picks now, I'm pretty sure I have a lot of different looking picks that I made at the beginning of the season to where we are right now, and I might have some surprises in here for you guys, just based on some of the picks I've made, not too crazy, but certainly some that aren't the usual names. So starting off with, I think, the easiest award to give out, the Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2024, I think pretty clearly is going to be Jayden Daniels. There was a chance for Malik Neighbors, the way he was playing a little bit, but he's sort of slowed down. Obviously, I picked Caleb Williams originally, but, he hasn't been bad, but just, the level that Jayden's at right now, there's some whispers in there for MVP, which are a little bit overblown. That's a bit of an overreaction, but it just goes to show the kind of season that Jayden's had, the kind of impact he's made to that organization just right away. Everyone that was in that building, said it from the start of training camp, through training camp, and once he was named the starter, and just seems like every game he's gotten better and really has put his stamp on this Washington offense, but also making an impression around the NFL against all these pretty good teams. Having the Commanders in first place right now is not anything to be taken lightly or for granted, especially how this organization has been performing over the last few years. So for them to nail everything in the offseason, bring in a new coach, new offensive coordinator, new president a couple years ago, and new general manager, just everything that the Commanders have done the final piece was Jaden Daniels, and for them to get it this correct and have it be already paying off, I think he's clearly the offensive rookie of the year. And unless he falls off or anything like that, which I don't really see happening. So that one's the easiest one to give out, in my opinion. Also, a close second is offensive player of the year, just in general. I went with Derrick Henry. I feel like he's going to break the rushing record. It's not based on him. It's based on the Ravens. But if the Ravens, are smart about it, right, or just, use common sense, having Derrick run the ball to the pace that he has been doing right now is a little bit ridiculous. Maybe he'll slow down a little bit, but even still, I think he is the focal point of this offense. I think he should be continued to use the way that he has been in the first couple weeks there, against the Cowboys and against the Bucks. These games where he just went absolutely insane. That's the identity, the main weapon for this Baltimore Ravens team, and he can be on a historical pace. He is on a historical pace right now, and I think he is just as deserving as anybody to win this award. It's night and day, really, with this Baltimore Ravens offense, where from what we saw last year when they were really good running the ball, it's no comparison to what they have right now with Derrick and Lamar back there, and just the plethora of different ways they could use those two guys and just keep defenses guessing. It's a nightmare. And the fact that they actually brought him in to pair him with Lamar is remarkable. And also, I just think that no addition this offseason has made a bigger impact than Derrick Henry. And, you could argue Kirk or I'm sure there's others I'm forgetting. Saquon, obviously another one. But for Derrick to be at this historical pace, and if the Ravens, can push for a top 3, top 2 seed in the conference, and he'll certainly win it, I believe. I think he's done great through the first half of the year. There's a whole other half left, right, obviously, but I think he has certainly blown everyone's expectations out of the water. So I picked him for Offensive Player of the Year. Then we'll go to Defensive Rookie of the Year here. I picked Jared Verse. I like what Jared Verse is doing, the outside linebacker, defensive end, whatever you'd like to call it, for the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think anyone's looked more settled in, or just more, like, what's the word I'm looking for? When I see him play, I don't think he looks like a rookie. Like, the way he gets off, the moves he's using to get around tackles, the kind of impact and pressure he's applying to other quarterbacks, he does not look like a rookie, in my opinion. And I think for a lot of people who don't really know or are Rams fans or anything like that, if you try to point out and say which one of these guys is a rookie, I don't think they would point to Jared Verse. He's already been making an impact on that defensive line, especially when they lose guys, over the years like Von Miller, Aaron Donald, retiring. They brought in guys like Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Braden Fisk is another rookie from Florida State University, also like Jared Verse, that has made a big impact. But I think Jared, being picked in the first round, you're not really being talked about too much, just because the whole thing around the draft was the quarterbacks being picked and the trades that we saw. The defensive side of the ball got ignored a little bit, if not for Laiatu Latu, Dallas Turner being picked, and then also Jared Verse. He wasn't really hyped up as much as everybody else, but he's proven to be right away exactly what they've been looking for, getting that edge pressure, which you absolutely need if you're going to be a contender. He's been one of their standouts just in general, not just out of all the rookies, but just in general on the Rams defense. And he leads all defensive rookies with 7 tackles for loss. He's tied for first in sacks for all rookies with 2.5 with Ejarian Cooper for the Green Bay Packers. So I like what Jared Verse has been doing. I think he is clearly one of the main favorites. If I were to pick somebody else, Laiatu Latu would be in there. Casimir Lassiter, I'm pretty sure that's his first name, the cornerback for the Texans. He's also been playing very well. So, there are some guys to choose from that have been going unnoticed, but I would give my pick to Jared Verse for sure. Then, looking at these picks I have here, we'll go to Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year, I have Dan Quinn. Much like the reasons I gave for Jaden Daniels, I think Dan Quinn, to not diminish what he's been able to do also, because Jaden Daniels, just the talent, the kind of player that he is, the kind of person to just come in and have the success that he has is one thing, but being paired up with a coach like Dan Quinn, everybody talks about how relatable and, just great of a coach he is on a personal level. To have this other opportunity now to become a head coach again with a organization that not a lot of people put too much stock into, and now have them near the top of the NFC just in general, is definitely something that merits this award. Just from what we saw last year with Washington, to make this sort of impact just from one year to the next, I think just speaks for itself. And if Washington, continue to go like this, if they win their division especially, it will certainly go to him. There are some other candidates you can choose from, Raheem Morris. I'm pretty sure I picked him to win. Or I actually might have gone with Dan Quinn. But regardless of that, Raheem Morris is one that I think wouldn't be a bad shout. Sean McVay, if they could come back from their bad start and win the division, he could have a really good case. And also Mike Tomlin. I heard Andrew Hawkins mention it today on ESPN, and I got to think about it. I'm like, you know what? Like, why can't Mike Tomlin win the Coach of the Year, right? He has been the example of consistency, the two quarterback situation and how tricky it could have ended up being. And for him to handle it perfectly, have Justin and Russ look like the best of friends, and just have this team at 6-2, definitely merits an award. But I think overall, I feel like the Commanders are going to win their division, so I think that's definitely going to be enough for Dan Quinn to win the Coach of the Award a year, certainly, along with Jaden Daniels, to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. So I'll go with Dan Quinn. Then we get into some of the heavy hitters, right? We're going to go to the Comeback Player of the Year. For my pick, I had Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk, leading the division so far, we've seen him have some crazy performances, like the game this past week against the Bucs, the first time against the Buccaneers. He's led game-winning drives like he has against the Eagles, and most importantly, I think we've just seen him take the games of Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Darnell Mooney looks like he's like a first-round receiver or something like that, or just Darnell Mooney's playing crazy right now, and I think it has a lot to do with Kirk and the abilities he's brought, opening up this offense and having no limitations to this offense because of how good of a quarterback Kirk is. And just Atlanta overall kind of flipping to a new chapter with a experienced, legitimate quarterback, all their young talent now, Kirk and Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, and the job they've done as well over the offseason, putting themselves on the map as being a pretty challenging NFC team. I think certainly Kirk has put himself up there as one of the favorites for this award, along with Sam Darnold, you could say, but, just recently they've lost a couple of games, so I think Kirk overall right now would be my pick, just on how quickly he's adapted to the Atlanta culture with some of the things we've seen on social media. It's great, and I think Kirk definitely has a great chance to win this award. Then the second to last one here, the Defensive Player of the Year, I gave it to Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney for the Green Bay Packers, the safety that the Packers signed this offseason. He leads the NFL right now in interceptions, and I don't think he's being talked about enough, honestly. To have 6 interceptions already and kind of police everything back there for the Packers, this Packers defense that leads the NFL in takeaways. I think Xavier, for a guy, just come into a new scenario, new team, new everything, and be already one of the guys that this defense looks to, an impact player, like TJ Watt punching balls out, like Jesse Bates being everywhere on the field, like, Myles Garrett, Dexter Lawrence also. I think Xavier is creating a lot of splash plays and a lot of plays just coverage-wise and going up and tackling in the box and things like that. And, you look at that, and it might go unnoticed to a lot of people, but then you think about what this team would look like if Xavier wasn't there, and I think this defense would look a lot different, and it wouldn't look as solid with him leading everything in the backfield right now. So this one I wanted to switch it up a little bit because, I originally picked TJ, and I think he has as good a chance as anybody if he just goes on a run here, but, that's a safe pick. Dexter Lawrence leads the NFL right now in sacks, but I feel like with the success of the Giants, I feel like that could hurt his chances a little bit. Chris Jones is just like the Chiefs are undefeated. You can make a case for them to be the best team in the NFL. So I feel like that one's just like a gimme. Chris Jones is a fantastic player, but I feel like he hasn't like garnered the big takeover performances like Xavier with the interceptions, like TJ forcing fumbles and things like that, like Dexter just being a menace. I think TJ or Xavier McKinney's my pick, but Dexter, TJ, those guys could also be in there as well. And now MVP, the big one. I had Jordan Love in there originally, but I haven't loved all the turnovers I've been seeing, so I've switched over to Josh Allen. A personal choice for me because I think it's really close with Lamar. And also Jared Goff is in there as well. Those are probably the top three. Patrick is always a safe option, but I don't think he's had that good of a year just for his standards alone. So anyone from Josh, Lamar, or Goff, I wouldn't be surprised. But I would like to see Josh Allen win it. I think he definitely deserves it too. Jaden Daniels is also a fun idea, but he's definitely not there yet. But you know, I'd like to see Josh win. You know, he is everything for this Bills team, and if you're talking about value that you bring to a team, this Bills team would be nowhere near where they are without Josh Allen. Like Lamar in Buffalo also. So I think those guys, it's very interchangeable between Lamar and Josh. But for right now, you know, Josh Allen and Justin Herbert are really the only quarterbacks in the NFL right now to only throw one interception. And these are NFL starters, right? Not just backups that have played like a game or two. Josh has played in every single game. Justin has played in every single game, maybe except one. But nonetheless, they are, you know, being very careful with the football, and that is super important, obviously. But Lamar does also lead with a lot of the statistical, you know, categories, and the fact that the Ravens destroyed the Bills also, I'd imagine, wouldn't help Josh Allen's case too much. But I'm assuming this will come down to seeding. Also, you could also look at it, Lamar. You know, Josh Allen didn't get a Derrick Henry this offseason. You know, he just got Amari Cooper. But I would say that Lamar, not to diminish him, because I think he also does deserve it, honestly. Lamar, I think, certainly has a lot more help around him, where the story around Josh this year was him elevating this team. And I think he's done a great job of doing that by elevating his own play, but also just being more smart with the football. It seems like he's a lot more settled. Before, it seems like he was frantic, very spontaneous. Now, it feels like it's very methodical, very thought out, and he has everything that you'd want in a quarterback. So I'd like Josh Allen to see win MVP. I think he has certainly deserved it over the last couple of seasons. So those are all the picks. Those are all the updated NFL Honors Awards that we have gone through that I think are pretty accurate through the first half of the year. And we'll see if I'm right when the regular season ends. But for right now, we're going to move on to the last couple subjects here. We have a discussion that I wanted to bring up because I started thinking about it. The similarities and the comparisons between Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. New environment, veteran quarterbacks expected to come in and be the final piece to everything. One has been pretty successful so far, while the other one hasn't really lived up to the expectations. Why that is, we discuss that when we return after this break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the Chip Shot Football Podcast here, and not really bringing up any necessary, breaking news or any storylines, really. I wanted to bring up this topic that it kind of popped into my head, I think, a day or two ago, And it really started kind of developing when I saw the Steelers play the Jets, and just how, we went back almost a decade and saw an old matchup between these two veteran quarterbacks, Russell Wilson against Aaron Rodgers. You think NFC Conference Championship game, like 2014, around that time, where these guys were really on the top of the quarterback world right now, right? Or at that time, I should say. And, the game just a couple weeks ago ended, and the result and what we saw on the field was sort of a small microcosm of the situations that we now see with Russ and with Aaron Rodgers, right? Two veteran quarterbacks. And like I said before, it's made me think, and I think it makes everyone think, that when you look at these two scenarios, right, how similar they are, in a sense that you have two veteran quarterbacks that were traded to new environments, to elevate and be sort of that final piece to the puzzle for, the Steelers or the Jets, respectively. And, they've had very different outcomes so far. One's been coming off of a pretty severe injury. Another one just kind of fell off of the face of the earth a little bit, just in terms of results and the situation there in Denver. Russ had a very bad time there in his first year there with Nathaniel Hackett and everything like that. It looked very bad. And then for Aaron Rodgers, coming off of that injury, devastating news for a guy at that age. Similarly as devastating as with Russ, just seeming like he just wasn't good anymore. But now this year, both of them had new opportunities. Technically Rodgers, because he didn't play in his first year, but this year was really the first year for these two new guys to kind of right the ship, prove their Hall of Fame, legacy that they have been building up over their career. They had a new chance to prove it now, to help new organizations, get to where they wanted to go with, experienced signal callers coming in there. But we've seen very different outcomes for what seems to be pretty similar scenarios with two similar quarterbacks heading into similar new environments. Different outcomes, right? You have a 6-2 team and you have a 2-6 team, right? Why is that? Surely both would make seamless transitions at this point and dominate right away. At least that's what the expectations were for the Jets, right? I'm not so sure maybe for the Steelers, but you'd expect better outcomes, right, from a team led by Aaron Rodgers, just from the MVPs and the skill set and everything like that. So you get to looking at what each quarterback was walking into so far, right, to kind of piece together this puzzle. You look at the Jets. Aaron Rodgers was stepping into a scenario where we looked at a very new offensive line, bringing in new veteran guys that were supposed to make this offensive line better. They are better, I would say that. A top-tier defense, right? That was the narrative around the Jets. Sauce Gardner, Quincy Williams, Will McDonald now. We didn't really know about him back then, but he's a very good player. C.J. Mosley, they have talented players on that defense. A great up-and-coming number one kind of wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. A great running back in Breece Hall as well. And that was at the beginning of the season, right? Not later on now, obviously, bringing in Devontae Adams and whatnot. There's a lot of good there to expect with the Jets, right? It seems like this has to work with everything that they've invested in the offseason. And what was already there, obviously. And then you look at the Steelers, maybe not as convincing, right? You look at an improving offensive line starting now with two rookies, ideally, a right guard that was injured and now is out for the rest of the year. One of their other rookies, their right tackle, is also out probably for the entire regular season. And if he was healthy, the Steelers offense would be starting three rookies on their offensive line. So not the kind of experience that you see with the Jets. Also, you had a good wide receiver number one with George Pickens, that's similar. A good running back, with Najee Harris. A great defense, just like the Jets. And a new offensive coordinator also. So there's a lot of, getting to know what the system is, what Arthur Smith was going to bring to this team. That was something that was another hurdle for the Steelers, if you would. So then, like I mentioned, the Jets get Devontae Adams and everything like that. And still, two pretty good scenarios, right, for the Steelers and the Jets. But still, it doesn't answer too much why we see such different results. If anything, you'd expect the Jets to be a little bit better, right? But that hasn't been the case. So we look at the stats so far and how these quarterbacks have been performing. Aaron Rodgers is 8th in passing yards at 1,896, 9th in touchdowns at 12, tied for 3rd in interceptions, though, with 7. He has a 61% completion percentage and is a 61% completion percentage, which is one of the worst for starting quarterbacks so far in 2024. And now, not to compare it to Russ because he's only played 2 games, but Russ, for what it's worth, has a 63% completion percentage, 542 passing yards, 0 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, all in only 2 games so far. But it's felt like his insertion into this Steelers team has already felt and looked better than what Aaron Rodgers is doing in New York. But just watching and kind of making our own conclusions off of what we've seen, Russ is looking better than Aaron Rodgers at the moment. And why has it not worked out, is the question. I believe because the main reason here, right, we finally get to the answer. In my opinion, I just feel like the view or the responsibility of each quarterback has been different, even though they are in similar points of their careers. Obviously, Russ doesn't have the MVPs that Aaron Rodgers does, but Russ is like 34, 35 years old, coming off of, in just recent memory, one of the worst years of his career professionally, performance-wise. And with Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old, coming off of a pretty bad injury. Similar sort of guys, right? But they've been thrown into situations that I think are very different, and both of these guys have different responsibilities, which I believe has led to different outcomes and how one looks drastically different than the other, right? All last season, starting with the Jets, we heard that the Jets were just a quarterback away. Once Aaron Rodgers got there, the rumors started to swirl around. This team was going to be Super Bowl bound. They just needed a quarterback, right? And who better than Aaron Rodgers? In other words, they would win. In other words, they would win just because of the fact that they have Aaron Rodgers, right? Once Aaron Rodgers was a Jet, they figured they were going to win just because they had Aaron Rodgers, the legendary, talented Aaron Rodgers. And not to say that he's not that, but the responsibility right away you see there is that they expect to win because of Aaron. Everything is on Aaron, right? If something's going to work or if this thing is going to fail, like we've seen, it's going to be mostly on Aaron. So the support really isn't there, in other words, also. So logically, if you think about the pressure already on Aaron Rodgers, if you just take away the name, you put all that pressure on a 40-year-old quarterback after having a severe injury the year before that. It is realistic now, looking at the results, that there is going to be a lot of challenges just to win solely because of Aaron. Not really has worked out for them and not ready to add or complement what he's been able to bring thus far, right? I think they've put, and it sounds a little bit hypocritical or outlandish a little bit to say that they've put too much responsibility on Aaron Rodgers, but I think that's fair because it's the name holds a lot of weight, obviously, right? It's historic for what he's done, but even still, you can't just expect Aaron to do everything and be so surprised when the 40-year-old quarterback, again, coming off of a bad injury, isn't looking quite like himself at this point in his career. You can't be so surprised just because he is Aaron Rodgers, right? Father Time hasn't lost yet, so that's a real thing. Whereas in other scenarios, you look at other teams that are, presumably better than the Jets right now, and you look at the fact that it's just hard for any team realistically to just win because of their quarterback, right? I think the Jets, that was their mindset. We're going to win because we have Aaron Rodgers. Whereas I think other teams would tell you the Ravens don't just win because of Lamar. The Bills don't just win just because they have Josh Allen. The Chargers also, they don't just win because they have Justin Herbert, right? Those are three of the most talented guys, just as talented pretty much as Aaron. Maybe not throwing the football, but running, the accuracy, everything's all there for three of those guys. And they have all the talent to help their team, right? Like Aaron does, but they could win a lot of games because of their talents. But really, you look at what really matters and the trophies, the Super Bowls, and the accomplishments and everything like that. Josh Allen hasn't been to a Super Bowl, hasn't won a conference championship. Lamar hasn't been to the Super Bowl. Justin's only been in the first round of the playoffs. So no good team just wins because of their quarterback, right? It's very hard to do that in such a team-oriented sport. And you also even look at teams like the Lions, I could throw in there, the Steelers, the Vikings, the Chiefs even, how they've made it their goal to kind of focus on what surrounds the quarterback, right? You look at the Chiefs, great defense. They're a running team now, right? They don't just win because Patrick is extremely talented, right? If they did, they probably wouldn't be undefeated, right? If they didn't have a great running game, if they didn't have a great defense, they wouldn't be undefeated at this point. The Vikings, right? They don't have the talented quarterback like the Aaron Rodgers, like Josh Allen, right? But they have great play calling, a very good defense, great offensive line, great running game, great receivers. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. So, they don't just win because of their quarterback. The Lions, same thing. Jared Goff is very good, but they don't win the way that they do without that offensive line, without the identity, the ideas of Ben Johnson, the culture that Dan Campbell has brought. And the Ravens, too. Last year, they're a good team with Lamar, with whatever he brings, but they're a true contender now this year because they brought in Derrick Henry, right? They have an identity, they have a running game, and a good defense. I think that is really the difference here with all these situations, even including, like I mentioned, the Steelers with Russ and how we started this whole thing, right? The Steelers really made it a point of emphasis to They were committed to the running game, right? That's why they brought in Arthur Smith. They were going to be a run-heavy team. They knew they had a great defense. Even with their receivers, right? The receivers aren't necessarily some of the best group in the NFL, right? And their quarterback, Russell Wilson's coming in. He's a good player. He's experienced, has everything like that. But they made it a point to have a great running game, have a great defense, and know how to win games. That is the ultimate goal, right? And just by having Russ, I always like to compare it to like a house, right? The quarterback is ideally the roof, right? You can have a great house, you can build a great foundation, great everything about the house, right? A running game, great defense, offensive line, everything, right? But if you don't have a roof, if you don't have that quarterback, that house really isn't really worth that much, right? This team really isn't worth, contention if you don't have a great quarterback. But in the other way, if you have a great quarterback, if you build the roof first and kind of ignore all the other things, the house really isn't going to stand a chance when, tougher challenges come, down the road and things like that, right? It's going to crumble. So the roof, the quarterback should really be the last thing to enhance every other thing that you've done very well. And I think the Jets, why it hasn't really worked out for them, to kind of point it out, is the fact that I think it's been too much emphasis on just getting a great roof, just getting a great quarterback, right? That's going to fix everything, right? But they've negated the other pieces, right? Their defense really hasn't been living up to expectations, right? Bringing in Devontae Adams hasn't worked out too well. The running game, the offensive line, and, it's struggling a little bit now, and they're not getting the results. And even Aaron Rodgers, right, that roof is a little bit leaky, right? It's missing some throws. It just doesn't look quite the same. It's still a great roof, right? It's a great quarterback and everything, but I think they've negated some of the other things, the coaching and whatnot and everything like that. We could go on, but I think that's really the main reason. The expectations, the responsibilities on Aaron, not to, take away any blame from him, because certainly he's been pretty bad. He'd say that himself, but I think the Jets have just kind of overestimated what to expect from just one guy, and thinking that he was just going to cover everything up isn't realistic. The name holds a lot of weight, but the 40-year-old quarterback coming off of an Achilles injury is a tough sell, and I think that's coming through right now in their results and in their season so far. So I wanted to point that out just because what the Jets have been this year has really been mind-boggling to me. So I've thought about it, and that's the best answer I could give. So we'll leave that there. And for the last segment here, just quickly after the break, I had to preview the Lions and the Packers game coming up. We're going to do more of the predictions tomorrow, but this game has a lot expected of it. There's a lot of anticipation for this game, just for me personally, so we're going to preview it and pick a winner, go through the matchups and whatnot when we return after this quick break. Thank you guys for joining me here on the last segment of today's show. Just to go over this preview I have here for the Lions and the Packers game coming up in Week 9. Arguably the best game on this week, the NFC North leading Lions at 6-1 travel to Green Bay to face the Packers, who are second in the NFC North right now at 6-2. Green Bay enter this matchup on a 4-game win streak, while the Lions enter on a 5-game win streak. Two of the hottest, two of the best informed teams in the NFL play this upcoming week, and they're in the same division. It's as good of a matchup as you'd want to see in the NFL. The Lions are coming off of a 52-14 stomping, just beat down of the Tennessee Titans and taking first place away from the Vikings after the Vikings lost their second consecutive game the week prior as well. So that is as good of a form you'd like to come into, right? And then you look at the Packers, on the other hand, coming off of two very tight games against the Jaguars and against the Houston Texans, decided by a combined 5 points between those two games. They beat the Jaguars just this past Sunday by 3 points and the Texans by 2 a couple weeks ago. And these two teams last year, you look back to last year where they were compared to where they are right now. They split the season series last year. I believe each team won at the opposing team's field, so it just adds to this mini rivalry, I guess you could say, in the division. And last year, I think they were both on similar paths, right? Jordan Love's first year as the official starter, and the Packers team, on the rise, being a very underrated team, surprising a lot of people along the way in the playoffs as well. The same thing could be said for the Lions, right? Building on this project with Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, all their young players that they have still. Last year, they were a underrated team that people liked the story, but they didn't really believe yet in what this team could be. And they also proved a lot of people wrong, got to the conference championship. They arguably should have won it, but that's where the lack of experience comes in, right? Both of them were on similar paths and are still on similar paths now. And I think last year's success, both of them being sort of underdogs now this year, this could be a matchup of a conference championship, right? You never know with how it all ends up with the seedings and everything, right? That's how highly, I guess, I value these two teams, but I think it's almost a consensus view on the Packers and on the Lions that they are two of the best teams in the NFC. And focusing here on the Packers a little bit, the biggest, question, piece of news that's on everybody's mind is the health of Jordan Love and how he kind of progresses through the week with that groin injury. It's a tricky injury, and it's one that I do worry about for Jordan Love, just as if I were a Packers fan, because it would be an injury where it's like a hamstring or an ankle a little bit, the groin, because you look at the way that he got hit, he didn't really like take a huge hit or, I don't know, get bent backwards or get rolled up on or anything like that. He kind of just took a hit in the back from Trayvon Walker and took like a pretty funny, like odd looking step, and it hobbled him a little bit. His groin kind of strained from that, so it's a tricky injury that I feel like could get re-aggravated again in the game or anything like that, which is the last thing you want to see. So how he progresses through the week, I heard him say that he feels like he has a really good shot to play anyway, and I do hope he plays. I think he will be able to play, but again, I am just worrying about the potential of him aggravating that injury, because the groin is a very, like I said, a tricky injury to deal with, especially, running out of the pocket, staying alive and things like that. It all, plays into it. So that is something I would be concerned about, but also, if he is healthy, this most likely becomes a shootout at that point with all the receivers the Packers have, the great running game. I think it was good to see it last week where Jordan Love kind of went out and they relied on that running game with Josh Jacobs to sort of remind everybody that they're not just a quarterback-happy, pass-happy team. They could run the ball too and be very effective at it as well. So I thought that was good to see, to kind of show off the balance that this team has. And just overall, this Packers team leads the NFL in takeaways, but the sort of caveat to that is that they are in 7th place right now in the amount of giveaways that they do have so far. They have 12 giveaways to the 19 takeaways that they have on the year. So it's a difference, a turnover margin of +7. So, it's working for them right now, but I think, going onto the Lions right now and looking at what they're dealing with, you could make an argument that this is the best team in the NFL. I think this is the best team in the NFL, but it's not to say that they're just going to steamroll the Packers, because the division games are always something different, especially with these two teams. I think they're very comparable, and the offense is obviously looking unstoppable, right? With David, Jameer, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams is dealing with some off-field stuff, but when he's on the field, he's been very good this year. Sam Laporta. And Jared Goff is on a historical, sort of path right now in terms of accuracy and efficiency as well at the quarterback spot. So, and also the defense has been better than I thought it would so far after Aiden Hutchinson's injury. But it's not to say that I don't think they should make a move. I still think they should if they really want to, be the number one contender for a Super Bowl. I think they need to make a move like that. But also, how this relates to the Packers, you look at the Packers and how many takeaways they have. The Lions are tied for second with the amount of takeaways they're able to have throughout the year. They have 15 takeaways so far, but the big difference is with the Packers is the amount of giveaways they have. They only have 5 giveaways this year, and that's tied for third least in the NFL so far, and that's a difference of 10, a turnover margin of 10 right there compared to the 7 that the Packers have. So, for how many takeaways, Kirby Joseph, he's been a big reason why. And funny enough, Xavier McKinney on the other side for the Packers, they've been big factors into that. But on the offensive side of the ball, where I worry with Jordan Love is the turnovers we've seen, and we don't really see that with Jared and the Lions. So that's really one of the biggest differences in this game. And looking at the matchups that could make a difference in this game, some of them are going to be the Lions pass rush against Green Bay's offensive line. And I pinpointed this because Jordan Love has only been sacked 7 times this year. For comparison, Jared Goff has been sacked 17 times. And we look at that offensive line as one of the best in the NFL. Jordan Love, at least in pass protection, this offensive line has really not had Jordan Love in too many critical situations or critical spots where he's necessarily running for his life. So that's great to see, going up against a pass rush that I'm still pretty questionable about, but they've been able to make do without a legitimate, recognizable name as a pass rusher. So who wins that battle? Does the lack of a pass rush now make a difference if Jordan Love is just sitting there picking their defense apart? I feel like that could be a case. Or the Lions could surprise everybody and have a pretty decent pass rush without a namesake guy. That's one matchup. And also, another one I'm looking at is just both of these teams running attack. You know, the Packers running attack with Josh Jacobs and the Lions running attack with David and Jahmyr Gibbs. Both of their running games rank 5th and 6th best in the NFL against rushing defenses on the other side. In Detroit, that ranks 5th, and Green Bay, that ranks 10th in the NFL. You know, not a huge discrepancy there. Both of them are able to run the ball, but are also able to stop the run at a decent rate. So who sort of breaks, who gives in, who allows bigger chunk plays in the running game, right? And who sticks with the running game longer as well is an interesting chess match that I think will decide this game. And lastly, the two play callers, Matt LaFleur against Ben Johnson. Because when you get like good play callers like this, I feel like there's always a good chance that we see different calls, we see the trick plays coming out, right, and everything like that. Ben Johnson is one of the best coordinators, offensive play callers in the NFL. Matt LaFleur, one of the best offensive minds also. So how do they sort of best each other? Who gets more out of their unit on the day also is so interesting to kind of compare and look at who's having more success against the opposing team's defenses. But getting to the prediction now to kind of close out the show, I think I am going to go with the Lions because they are the best team in the NFL. You know, you have Jordan Love's injury that makes me pretty nervous, despite the fact that their offensive line doesn't give up too many sacks. But Jordan Love's turnovers have the kind of football that he has been playing. It's not been awful, but I feel like it's definitely left improvement. You know, it's left a lot to be desired really, because I feel like Jordan is a lot better and can play cleaner football than we have seen him. And the turnovers the decision-making has been one thing. I get that he just lets it rip and he is fearless when it comes to throwing these passes. But sometimes I'd like him to be a little bit more cautious and kind of think bigger picture, not just ripping it mindlessly. So that's another thing. And Jared Goff in the offense, right, not giving up that many giveaways is a huge thing, because if you're not beating yourself and you're that good, it's very hard for teams and to run into teams that are just better than you. So the Lions can stack up talent-wise with anybody, and if they don't beat themselves, you have to be almost perfect to beat them. So I feel like the Packers still have a little bit ways to go here. So I think it's going to be a close game regardless, but I like the Lions to take this one. And and not to write off the Packers, but in this matchup with the injury and everything, I'm going to go with the Lions overall. And with that being said, that'll wrap up today's show. Thank you guys for joining me on today's episode of the Chip Shot Football Podcast. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. Also, check out both YouTube channels for more content around the NFL in a variety of different ways on the Podcast Network channel and the GSMC Sports Network channel. And also tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time to catch more of the live shows and be here with me, your host, Manny Maradiaga, for more coverage, stories, breaking news, everything around the NFL each and every weekday. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about some Thursday night football and look ahead to the weekend for Week 9 in the NFL.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit.